Hello there, this is Legacy School, Year 7 History, our Lesson 3, Part 1. We will be talking about the strengthening of the working class in Europe and the beginning of socialism, and we will be talking about communism in its early stages. We will also mention important personalities and some of their accomplishments like Karl Marx, Leon Trotsky, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin in the second part of our video. Now, of course, since history began, some people were rich and others were poor. Rich people have always controlled wealth, resources, and the production in the society. The economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and their operation to gain profit is called capitalism, as one of the characteristics is accumulating capital or money. So let's understand that. So private ownership of all the equipment and having all the money in one hand, deciding what, how, and when I produce by one person is capitalism, right? So this is private ownership of the means of production, so all the equipment, the material, and the operation to get the benefit and the profit is called capitalism. Now, at the same time, the opposite of it, so public ownership ideas or ideas that support common or public ownership have also existed since antiquity. Even amongst the Greek philosophers, there were people who thought about how to distribute this wealth in a more equal way, right? So lots of early philosophers and thinkers, many revolutionaries of the previous centuries thought about distributing the rights and wealth more fairly amongst the people. So not just the rich have everything and the poor have nothing. Now, the socialist political movement originated in the revolutionary movements of the mid-18th or late 18th century. Okay, that's the 1700s. Okay, and out of concern, it was created, or it originated out of concern for the social problems associated with capitalism. So people started to see that this way of life, this economical system, capitalism, has social problems. It creates social problems for the workers. And in the 18th century, mid and late 18th century, people started opening their eyes to these social problems. Now, the first self-conscious socialist movement, which means that the first movement that actually had a goal to achieve a better way of life, developed in the 1820s and the 1830s. This is the 19th century, the early 19th century, with the working class seeking democratic reforms all around Europe. So the leaders of this movement were calling for a better distribution of income, better living conditions for the working classes. They were known to live in very, very bad conditions, poor housing, very, very unsafe environments. And they also wanted extension of voting rights, suffrage, that you have already mentioned in year 6 and even before that. Now, let's talk a little bit about socialism and communism, two very important concepts. Now, socialism is a political, social, and economic philosophy characterized by social ownership of the means of production and workers' self-management of enterprises. So what does that mean? As we mentioned earlier, in capitalism, things were owned by private people, families, one rich person. Okay? They decided how to use the equipment, what material to use, because they owned everything. Now, in socialism, the ownership will be social, so the people will own it, not one person or one family, but the whole society will own it. Okay, the means of production, the land, the material, and the equipment, and the workers will manage. The workers will determine and establish what they do, how they do it. Social ownership can be public in this system, collective, or cooperative, working together. Now, social democracy is another important concept. Social democracy originated within the socialist movement, supporting economic and social interventions to promote social justice. People believe that there is no social justice. Some people are richer and some people are extremely poor. So out of socialism, people started to think that we need democracy. We need everybody to be equal. Now, it might be a surprising fact for you that many European countries actually operate as social democracies. For example, Sweden, and the Nordic countries in general, Sweden, Finland. This means that they blend a lot of socialist policies and capitalist policies. Okay, socialist policy, for example, that they provide state healthcare, social security, okay, and workers' compensation. So if you have it in Sweden, if you have any health problem, you can go to the hospital and nobody's going to charge you a penny, right? They provide social security. If somebody has an accident or loses his job for some reason, the state takes care. So this is a more socialist policy, although Sweden is not a socialist country. At the same time, Sweden and some of these Nordic countries, they also have capitalist features, like there is private property, there are companies run by families, run by private people, okay? And they have a democratic process, so people can vote. There are multiple political parties, okay? So they blend socialism and capitalism, okay? Well, basically, socialism is not all bad. It just has to be in the right hands. Now, let's talk a little bit about communism. Now, communism is a branch of socialism. Now, both communism and socialism are founded on the idea of collective cooperation, that we are all working together for our future. But they are different in one very important detail. Okay? Communists believe that cooperation should be run by only one government, which is a totalitarian government, decides about everything by itself. So there is no other party. Basically, communism is a form of government. Socialism is the ideology, is the philosophy, the thinking. And communism is the way we are going to run it. Now, the Soviet Union was a socialist and communist country. However, modern-day Russia is not a socialist and not even communist. Right? Now, at present, states controlled by these Marxist-Leninist parties that were originally the socialist idea under a single-party system include China, Cuba, Laos, Vietnam, and North Korea. Of course, communist parties are all around the world, in other countries as well. Communist parties or their descendant parties, they remain politically important in several other countries, but they are not the only country in the rest of the world. All right, so this is the end of part 1. We will be talking about famous personalities, and I will explain your homework in part 2. Thank you. So please continue this lesson by watching the second part.